looking for another one of our little truck talks, simply to make use of this time. I've had something on my mind for the past couple of days that I want to talk about. I was listening to John Vervaeke, and somebody asked him, can you please give us a concise definition of the meaning crisis? And he gave as concise as he could an explanation of the meaning crisis, and that kind of helps me, because he's got a 50-part series where he's talking about, awakening from the meaning crisis, and there's a whole lot of information in there, but it helps me to zoom in and to zoom out. So we can zoom in real close on all the details in the 50-part series, but being able to zoom out and get a concise definition, I find very helpful and thought-provoking. So it's not exactly new information, but it does help to spark the kind of thought which helps me see where the information is relevant to what I'm interested in. What am I interested in? I'm interested in Christians becoming more relevant. I'm interested in Christians becoming more connected to the real world and having more agency in the real world, being able to make a positive difference in the real world. Now, the problem is, what constitutes making a positive difference? And there are many Christians probably listening to me right now to where your idea of what constitutes a positive difference is more or less persuading as many people as possible to receive as true the things that you think are true. And everything, the primacy of the benefit of Christianity is offloaded to the afterlife, something that none of us can test or demonstrate or validate or verify, which is a problem. So what I'm interested in is Christians becoming positively agentic here, okay? And what I have in mind is Christianity should be able to influence communities to where people are interested in self-development, self-growth, and then in the development and growth of other people, and more people are interacting in love, more people are taking on responsibility, bearing the cost of that responsibility without resentment, which is key, and in love helping other people grow to the point where they can do the same. And so many things go into this. There's the problem with Christianity right now as it relates to the meaning crisis is Christians are made to feel right and virtuous and righteous for believing certain things and for avoiding certain things. I was just having a discussion a few days, maybe yesterday, with somebody started off with music, and they're talking about all these passages of Scripture where the people who are riotous and drunken and frivolity and reveling, lasciviousness, you do all these things and you will not inherit the kingdom of God, okay? And so Christians think that they are virtuous for not doing those things. And they're missing the point. It's, and I've used this example before, but if you think about a German Shepherd and a rabbit, when I say a German Shepherd, I'm talking about a very well police-trained or military-trained German Shepherd who will follow commands, any command you give them, and will do what they're told. They have the potential to rip your arm off, but choose not to. They have the capability of doing that. A lot of Christians are like rabbits. A rabbit is a harmless creature. It does not have the capability to rip your arm off like a trained police dog can, okay? And a lot of Christians are like rabbits in the sense that, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong, but you're not doing anything good either, you see? A trained police dog does a lot of things. They're sniffing for drugs. They protect things. And of course, there is the defensive thing and where they can chase down enemies. And there is a formidable threat there. You know not to mess with a police dog. Okay? You will, unless you got a gun or something like that, you're going to have yourself handed to you. There's going to be an open and closed case. You know not to do that, but you'd mess with a rabbit any day. A lot of Christians are like the rabbit. Christians are not formidable. They're not agentic. They're not effective. They're so focused on being right. They're so focused on being righteous. And typically that's by avoidance of wrong things rather than by doing a good thing. They're so focused on being righteous that they're not effective. And the problem with Christianity, one of them, is that it's, I'm talking about the Christianity that we experience. I'm not talking about base reality Christianity that we get from the Bible, but the Christianity that we experience in Western culture, and I'm in the United States, it makes people feel righteous without being effective. Okay? So I know Christians right now who think that they are in it for the kingdom. They sit at their house all day, do absolutely nothing to make anything in the world better at all, but they don't cuss, and they don't have tattoos, and they don't have nose rings, and they don't watch TV shows that have cuss words in them, or sex or nudity, but violence is okay. There's all these things they don't do, but what do they do? All right? And that turns around to where you have this, Paul lists his vices and virtues, and we have to realize the virtues. And we cannot virtue signal the virtues. We have to actually, and that's probably a separate discussion that I want to have. I've been thinking about having that with Paula on video, is about how Christianity also makes the flaw of attacking our behavior as Christians from the outside in rather than from the inside out. You hear, a sermon that I heard a sermon on Ephesians 5 not too long ago, and the dude was talking about all these kinds of things that we should be doing like on the surface level outside. But if you read all these passages in context, what I get from them is that a genuine transformation from the inside causes these things to blossom like fruit, causes them to come forth as fruit. If the genuine tree is changed on the inside, it can do nothing but bring forth the kind of fruit that it should be bringing forth. So it's not really about, you can't tape apples to an orange tree. You need to transform into an apple tree to start appling. All right, so the fruit of the Spirit has to come from inside, and the fruit of the Spirit should affect other people in a way that it affords their transformation to be more fruitful and effective. Now, one of the problems with being effective is that if you are effective, you will. You understand me, Christians? Listen to me. You can't get around this. You will get your hands dirty, and you will be blamable for something not going perfectly right. And instead of trying to do something positive that's helpful, that may result in controversy or blame or something like that, or you being the target of other people's attacks on you, instead of risking that, people just avoid it. They avoid it, and they just don't do anything. They go to church and they sit on the pew. They go home and they sit at home. If you try to do anything for God, and this is something you got to understand, if you ever try to do anything for God, the most formidable opposition you're going to get is from other Christians telling you you're doing it wrong. That's the problem with it. And Christians tend to know this. I don't know if they come to the level where they can articulate it, but they tend to figure this out. And so they'd rather not do anything because they don't want the criticism for having done it wrong. And when I see somebody doing something, sometimes I see people doing something that's just outlandishly stupid, but they're trying. So I try not to be critical. Like, yeah, you're not going to get a lot of fruit out of doing that, but I also recognize that that person may have to go through the stage of trying to serve God in that capacity as a stage of growth that he has to go through in order to become wiser and become more agentic. So when I see somebody trying something, I try not to be too critical, but at the same time, the church is so far off, it's so disoriented away from what it should be doing and what it could be doing, that it's difficult to even have a conversation with people about what should be happening. So in the meaning crisis, there is meaning when meaning has to have connectedness. And when we talk about the meaning crisis, we're talking about people not being effective, not being connected, to the point where it causes, like especially with COVID and things like that, people are starting to have mental health issues because they're not connected. They're in their house all the time. They're not connected with other things. We get meaning, we get value from connecting with our environment and from connecting with other people in ways that we value, in meaningful relationships. And I know I'm using the word meaningful as I'm talking about meaningful. You're not supposed to use a word that, in quality relationships, let me say it that way. You're not supposed to use a word to define a word, which I just saw the dictionary do recently. Kind of frustrated me. Our society, especially in Christianity, we tend to put layers between us. What we should value the most is having the most direct tactile interface with our environment. Okay? Think of a rock climber putting their hands on the rock, putting their feet on the rock, feeling exactly where they should grab and push and pull themselves up to where they can get higher to accomplish what they're trying to get to the top. You feel that. And I heard the definition of a flow state, and I think this also connects very strongly to meaning, where think of any sport. My wife and I play volleyball. Think any sport or anything that you're doing, there's a tight coupling, and think of rock climbing as a good one because you will fall and die if you get it wrong. There's a tight coupling between the actor and the environment, and feedback from the environment. There's a tight coupling between you and the environment, and feedback from the environment, and the feedback is accurate and error matters. Those things are key. They're key in a description of a flow state, and there has to be a purpose there. And so with a purpose comes relevance, and a relevance realization. There's certain things that are salient to you, and of all the things that are salient, that are foregrounded, not backgrounded, they're apparent to you, you recognize some of them as relevant, and the purpose that you're trying to accomplish is what selects things as being relevant, okay? I'm driving down the road right now, and there's so many different things I could be focused on. There's so many trees side by side. And because of what I'm trying to do, those trees are not on my relevance landscape, okay? Now, I am trying to drive safely, so if one of the trees was falling in front of me, that would be on my relevance landscape, and that was the case. We had several hurricanes in this area, and we're going back and forth between Louisiana and Alabama. We encountered downed trees in the road, and the tree suddenly went from being irrelevant to being to being both salient and relevant to me. And the science behind what makes things relevant to us is complicated. It's complex. It's complicated. It's not exactly clear, especially when you look into, like, if I wanted to get an AI system to replicate how I choose things to be relevant to me, it'd be difficult to tell it how to do that. But one of the things we can do is have purpose. So you have purpose, you have things that are relevant to you, and you have tactile interface with your immediate surroundings. You have feedback from your immediate surroundings, and the feedback is quick and accurate and clear, and error matters. So what I'm proposing to you is that the more layers you have between you and the direct tactile interface with your environment, the less connected you feel, and the less meaning you feel like you have, okay? If you, like, I'm married. When I interact with my wife, of course there's, marital interactions, but when we interact, say we're having a conversation, there are multiple times when we look at each other a certain way. There are times when we laugh. There's times when I'm reading her facial expression. There's times when we physically touch. There's times when we hug. There's times when we hold hands. All that stuff is first-hand tactile interface interaction. And I feel connected to her when we speak, when we have these kinds of conversations. And if we have to spend a couple days apart because one of us has to travel for work or something like that, now we're sending texts and emails and selfies, and we're having phone calls, and I can still have a certain degree of connectedness, but it's not as good. It's not as connected. So what I really want, and of course while you're apart from your spouse, what do you really want? You want to be back together. The worst thing when you're married to someone you love is to be apart from your spouse. The best thing is to come back together after having been apart. That's pretty amazing. And so you love that. You love that connectedness. There's a lot of meaning there. The more disconnected you are from an arena that you think is relevant, the more it's going to play into your mental health not going so well. When I was deployed, I did not have connection with my family like I wanted to. There were emails, and then like the second deployment, by then we had video chat like Skype and things like that. So it wasn't as bad on the second deployment as it was on the first deployment to Iraq, where there was hardly anything. It was just emails for a while, and every once in a while a phone call. And so you feel disconnected, and the more disconnected like it's relevant. I feel like I need to be connected to my family, but I also feel disconnected. And the more you sense that, now being aware of it helps too. And so the more connected you are, the more grounded you're going to feel, the more meaning you're going to feel like you're going to have, the more satisfaction you're going to be getting out of life. And especially when you can interact in a loving way that creates affordances for love and growth and transformation of all the people and things that you care about. When you have layers of interaction between you, layers of mediation between you and the environment, okay? It's less tactile. So if you say you're playing a VR game where you're climbing a mountain, there are some similarities, but you're not actually lifting your body weight. You don't actually get to see if this rock really holds your weight or not. It looks kind of cool. It's kind of fun. I played a VR game where you climb a rock. It was kind of fun. It was kind of cool. There are some ways in which I felt immersed in that environment, but there were also many ways in which I did not. And I was very thankful that I did not have to lift my entire body weight. For that, it would have been exhausting because I am a heavy dude. The more layers you have between the thing you're trying to interact with and you, the worse off you're going to feel. Bring up theological discussions. What's the big problem with theology that we always talk about on this channel? Talk about it all the time. The big problem with theology is that there are a lot of metaphysical truth claims in theology for which there are no checksums. Okay? So what do you mean by that? In any other domain other than theology, well, not any other domain, but in so many other domains other than theology, there are checksums on reality, on whether or not something is true or not, whether something is functional or true or not, okay? So if I make a claim that, hey, there are dead spots in the ocean, and here they are, I can actually take a boat out there and go look and explore those dead spots and do a checksum on that claim. If somebody makes a claim that, hey, your starter on your car is out, and if I replace it, your car will work again, there's about to be a checksum on that, because you're going to do that, and then we're going to see if it works. And if it works, hey, it sounds like you're right. So that's a way I can verify that you're right. And if you do that and it still doesn't work, either you did it wrong or you're wrong. So, and in medicine, we can test medicines, doctors. There's all kinds of fields in which there are checksums. If you're in construction, you're building houses. If you're doing IT project management, which is what I do, and say you're building a new hardware environment, and you're creating a new data store, and then you move the VMs over, and then they don't work. Well, that is a checksum that there is a problem, okay? And then you can go in and investigate that problem and investigate the incident and try to resolve it. Well, you see, I'm talking about feedback between me and the environment. Feedback. I've moved the server, and I get feedback from the environment that VM no longer works. What's the problem? That's feedback, you see? And now I feel like I'm tangoing with something that matters. If I put the starter in the car and it works, that's feedback. And now I'm and if it doesn't work, that's feedback too. So we operate best when there is direct feedback from the environment. The problem with Christianity is that there is no direct feedback from the environment, and we're disoriented. We're disoriented. Our focus is on having beliefs. And there's so many things that go into this that lead up to this kind of thinking. Like, I'm thinking of polyvagal theory. I'm thinking of being limbically hijacked. You can be emotionally hijacked, emotionally manipulated. Your limbic system can be the reptile part of your brain. You can be your vagal nerve can respond to things, truth claims in a certain way that make you go into a threat response reaction, and you get defensive rather than going into an openness exploratory mode. You automatically go into one or the other. You start to feel threatened. And then there's the concept of having mode and being mode. And we should be doing, being, and becoming, but instead Christians operate in having mode where I have beliefs. And that's like the mistake of being in having mode, like with your spouse. I don't have a wife, I'm being a husband. She's being a wife, but she's also being Paula, and I'm being Kevin. And our job with each other is to try to, in love, create affordances for each other. Like I'm trying to create affordances in my own life to be a better Kevin, to be and become a better Kevin. And she's trying to create affordances for Paula to be and become a better Paula, but I'm also trying to create affordances for her to grow, not just myself. And she's trying to create affordances for me to grow, and we are trying to afford in love each other's growth and transcendence and becoming something better than what we are today. We're trying to help afford that. We're trying to do that in love. So we're going to approach each other in being, not in having. So my wife is not like a spare part in a car where I have a wife like I have a starter in my car and I can just swap it out for another piece. She's not interchangeable. She's not fungible like that. She's a unique individual, and I have meaning when I'm connected to her specifically, not just when I have a wife. Okay? I don't want to have a wife in having mode. I want to be. So Christians have beliefs in having mode. So they're not doing, being, and becoming Christ-like. And when I say Christ-like, what goes through my mind is the best version of Kevin that there could possibly be. I try to imagine that. What is the best version of Kevin that is attainable in any way? And what can I do to become that? And by definition, there's nothing better you could do. What's the best version of the people that are around me? And what can I do? What's the best thing that I can do to help them become that? That is crucial. That's key. So Christians are in having mode, not being or becoming mode. That's a problem. And then there's information about the 4 kinds of knowing. We have videos on that. And embodied cognition. Cognition is embodied. There's a lot of information, a lot of feedback through the environment that gets you through your body. And you have to learn what those signals mean. You have to learn what that feedback means, how to interpret that feedback. You have to exegete that feedback and try to figure out what that feedback is trying to tell you. Somebody says something and makes you feel a certain way. What does that mean? It could mean that they are a threat to you. It could mean that you are holding your beliefs in having mode. And then there's a whole component of fear that comes in. I talk to people all the time, and when I start to introduce questions about beliefs, they start to react in a defensive way that is based on fear. They're afraid, just like if I'm going to take, they act, when I talk about their beliefs, they're afraid that I'm going to take their beliefs from them the same way a child is afraid I'm going to take their toy from them. The exact same way. It's the exact same interaction. And what that does is it tells me that they have their beliefs in having mode, and it tells me that they are insecure about their beliefs, and there's a lot of fragility there. They're telling me that they're the kind of person in Ephesians 4:14 who's a child tossed about to and fro with every wind of doctrine. When somebody gets defensive when you start talking about beliefs, all that stuff is happening. They are in having mode, and they're insecure, and they're reacting out of fear, and they are not grounded, and they are not connected. And so what's the goal? The goal is to get people connected in a real way with base reality, with God, and with the God of the Bible. So these discussions come up about the Trinity and the Godhead and heaven and mankind. There's so many doctrinal things out there. And Christians, seriously, are severely misoriented when they think this stuff, these disambiguating, semantically disambiguating these metaphysical truth claims about the ontological certitude of what these things are. They are missing the point. They are completely missing the point. These things are points of interaction with which we can interact that afford our transformation, and they have to be seen that way. The Bible is a point of engagement. Now, what you want is a direct interface with the Bible, a direct interface with the Spirit of God, meditation, prayer, a direct interface with other people who share similar purpose of you as trying to, in love, afford growth and transformation in themselves and in other people by taking responsibility, being able to bear the weight and cost of that responsibility, and seeing the new thing that comes up as a result, a new and better thing that comes up as a result. So you need to have direct, first-hand, tactile interaction where there is direct feedback from the environment, and that feedback needs to be tightly coupled to your experience with it, and error needs to matter. And it's, when you're talking about metaphysical truth claims, it's difficult to tell where the error is, because the error is, the mattering of the error is not detectable on this side of the afterlife, on this side of death. So the error that matters is ascertaining the genuineness of a transformation of an individual. Is the individual transforming? Are you better than you were yesterday? Are you understanding more? Are you reading the text without exporting it to somebody else, without outsourcing your sense-making to somebody else? I'll give you an example of something that happened recently with me. I was having a discussion with somebody, and I think the discussion was about what theologians do you go to when you don't understand the Bible? I'm like, I said none. We use a sound methodology for biblical interpretation, and then we use the distributed cognition edification model of Ephesians 4:16. And they responded by saying, look, we're not in this alone. This is not a lone sport or something like that. You're not a lone wolf out there being able to do all this yourself. I'm like, oh, hold on. You apparently did not read Ephesians 4:16, which I just referenced. Ephesians 4:16 is a distributed edification model. Everybody is involved. Yeah, it's not a lone sport. That's my point. I'm not outsourcing my sense making to some theologian somewhere, nor am I in this alone, doing a lone sport. And those theologians that you think are experts, they are welcome to participate in the Ephesians 4:16 edification model if they are capable, if they can follow Rule Omega, if they are not ideologically possessed. Yeah, they can be consulted. And yeah, we can read their stuff. Do we believe everything they say? No. With everybody, whether they're in the Ephesians 4:16 edification model or whether you're reading a commentary, with everybody, you're going to exercise discernment and separate the truth from the noise. And as you're exercising discernment, it's helpful to get other people who are just beyond you in the transformation process or have other things. There needs to be enough diversity to where insight can be generated. And when you have genuine dialogos with another person, as we've seen many times, it's happened on Wednesday nights on our channel, but when you have genuine dialogos with somebody, both people help each other see things that neither one of them could have seen on their own. So you have to have that. And you generate something new, and then you wrestle with it. You exercise your discernment with it. And then you bounce your discernment off other people. And you're calibrating your senses. Like, my body is telling me things too. I'm having a vagal nerve response to what I'm hearing and how I'm being treated. Is this an openness? Is this defensiveness? And if I have a defensiveness response, do I have the necessary skill set to know how to calm myself down, get back out of the defensiveness response, and then get back into an openness response? Because the scientists tell us you cannot be in both at the same time. You can be in either one or the other. Now, if you know this about yourself, because you know that cognition is embodied, if you know this about yourself, you can develop skill sets and ecology of practices whereby you can be better. You can increase in skill at your ability to remain open and exploratory rather than get defensive and combative and feel threatened when you're discussing certain things. So I have moved on from trying to convince people of certain truth claims toward trying to help afford mutually, we help try to afford each other's transformation. And I've seen tremendous changes in some of the people that operate with us. So as I'm talking to this clown about Ephesians 4:16, he is starting to recognize. Then we talked about the whole thing about the transition point in verse 13, that word till, who's edifying in verses 11 and 12, the apostles, pastors, teachers, evangelists, that kind of thing. Who is edifying in verse 13 through 16? Everybody, lottie-dottie. So there is supposed to be a transition. The text is very clear about that. And you're supposed to transition from that phase to another phase. And as far as I understand it, I would guess, can the whole body of Christ do that at once? I don't know. But I would guess that you would have to try to start doing that at a local assembly first, right? So this clown comes back and he's like, now listen closely, we're talking about the meaning crisis and connectedness, tactile connectedness with the arena in which you're trying to be effective, okay? I'm engaging in the arena. I'm engaging in Ephesians 4. I'm looking at the text and I'm trying to see what it's trying to tell me. And he is asking me, who else in Christian history has come away with your understanding of Ephesians 4? As if I can come up with no other Christians who have come up with this understanding, that proves that it's wrong. Now, what am I supposed to do with what I'm seeing in the text? You see? He's trying to tell me that I should not be coming to this conclusion in Ephesians 4, but he cannot tell me from the text why I'm misunderstanding it. He can't tell me that. His only checksum is to bounce it off what everybody else. Well, let me tell you what. To me, looking through all of Christian history, looking for specifically somebody who understands Ephesians 4 the way that I see what the text is saying, kind of seems daunting and combinatorially explosive. Okay? I don't know if I have the time to do that. But there is a sense, it's not that I don't care, but in a sense I don't care. Because the text very clearly says what it says. I do not need confirmation from a bunch of dead people who were ideologically possessed in in Catholicism, and then Calvinism for, Catholicism for 1,000 years plus, with Calvinism floating around out there. And everybody, since the 4th century, all of Christianity has not been Christianity. It's been belief systems that are subsets of Christianity. And frankly, I do not care what they think. Anybody who is paradigmatically encased and entrapped, I do not care what they think. And if they thought something, that's probably a good reason to avoid it, okay? Except you repent, you shall all likewise perish. So I'm looking in the text. What do I want? I want Christians to be able to look into the text and see what it says. Do not make it so sanctimonious that you don't think you can understand the text, or that you have to have some dead person agree with you, or a bunch of dead people to agree with you, or anything like that. Now, there are plenty of living people that I interact with on a daily basis who see this in Ephesians 4. Why do I need dead people to agree with it? And they're conducting good sense-making, and they're not afraid to disagree. And they're not going to get out-grouped if they disagree. Matter of fact, disagreement is going to, in a non-ideologically possessed way, is going to be a fun and exploratory thing as part of what we do. We disagree, and then we talk things out. That's the exercise. It's what we want to do. We want to exercise discernment. So he wants to create what Christians have been trained to do, and I see this as a microcosm of what's going on. They want to create layers between you and direct tactile interface with the environment. So I'm trying to have a direct interface with Ephesians 4. And I'm trying to practice it with a group of people on Wednesday nights, where there is feedback and where error matters. And I'm trying to see if, over time, does this result in the transformation of the participants into wiser people? And we've been doing this for a little over a year now, and I would say definitely yes. I would take anybody from my group, from our group on Wednesday night, I'd take any one of them that is a regular, and I would put them up against the most convincing false prophet person, and they would not be able, you could not convince these people of error because they are equipped with good sense-making. Now, as a group, it's like Voltron, man. You could not penetrate the group with falseness no matter how hard you tried. No matter how hard you tried. Because we do distributed cognition in Ephesians 14, and we're anti-fragile. To where you try to submit some kind of falsehood through us. People understand the axioms. They've been exercising discernment. They know the 4 kinds of knowing. They have some tools for how to interpret Scripture. And as a group, it's not fragile. We're not children tossed about to and fro with every wind of doctrine at all. So yeah, it's working. It's absolutely working, and I have these people trying to talk me out of it. Just trying to talk me out of it. Why? Why are you trying to talk me out of it? And they're trying to put layers of mediation between me and the evidence. That is what drives. So that's what drives people crazy. You look at the evidence, and you have a perception of one thing, but you are told that the approved opinion is something else, or you're not allowed to have that opinion because it's not already been captured in the previous subset of approved opinion. And what happens then? You start going crazy. You start going crazy. It's a problem with technology too. You want to have interaction between you and your environment where feedback very much matters. Okay, that's very important that you have that. Now in technology, you're on social media and there's all kinds of things that have certain messages to them. So no matter what happens in the world, the messages of the various institutions, like your denomination, your Catholicism, Southern Baptist Convention, the Assemblies of God, wherever you are, the messages of these institutions do not change and adapt to the changing environment, what's happening in society. There's so many issues we're facing right now. Some of the big ones, like COVID, is a big issue that we're facing right now. The gender crisis, if you want to call it that, is a big issue that Christians don't know what to do with this kind of stuff. They're not, and we don't have, like, just having messaging. We're getting messages that is not responding to the environment, and we're becoming ill-equipped to deal with the environment. It's like a rock climber having to follow a set of rules that makes it impossible to climb the rock. And so what we wind up doing without realizing it is we wind up embracing cognitive dissonance to where we think we are following the truth, and we're unwilling to admit that the truth we think we're following is actually making us completely ineffective in the world. We don't have anything as Christians. When I say we don't have anything to offer anybody that helps them. Oh, I went to the soup line and fed people. We can give people fish, but we don't have. But you know why you can do that? It's not because of your Christianity. It's because a variety of other things. You have a job, right? Don't you have a job? Don't you have, so you get your money from your secular job, and then your Christianity tells you to go out and feed the soup line and give money to. We need teach a man to fish kind of stuff. And it's not just about getting a job and being able to support yourself in this material world. And the Christians, we're so paralyzed with what to do that the only thing we think we can do in this physical world is to physically help people who have physical needs. But we are seemingly completely incapable of helping people transform into what they should be. So one of the things we need to definitely advocate in order to help people transform, we have to advocate for direct interface with the arena, direct interface with Scripture, direct interface with people, where people are allowed to explore the perspective that they are experiencing. I cannot stress that enough. You have to be able to explore the perspective that you are experiencing, and do not follow a paradigm that talks you out of that perspective and tries to tell you that it's wrong because, 500 years worth of Brother Memses didn't also believe it. That is not how we operate. Thanks for watching. May the Lord bless you, and good day.